Okay, good evening, and I'm very happy to welcome Alain Fleischer and Georges Didier Huberman, who are guests of the MFA section of Bezalel Academy, invited by the head of the department, Raphael Zagouri-Orly. I will introduce them, then I will have a discussion with them, and after that you will have the possibility to make comments and to ask questions. So Alain Fleischer was born in Paris in 1944. He's a filmmaker, photographer, writer, and artist. He's also the director of the prestigious art school Le Fresnoy, the National Studio of Contemporary Arts, an interdisciplinary art school in the north of France.
As a writer, he published more than 50 books, both theoretical essays and novels. Alain Fleischer is the author of the very important film that we just saw, Fragments from Conversation with Jean-Luc Godard. Georges Didier Huberman is a philosopher and art historian. He was born in Saint-Étienne in 1953. He teaches at l'École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris. He is the author of many essays on literature, art history, philosophy, and aesthetic. He dedicated few of his writing to Giacometti, Bataille, Pennone, Charcot, Balzac, Fra Angelico. One of his most known books is Images malgré tout, Images in spite of all, published in France in 2003, dealing with the representation of the horror of the extermination camps in photography and cinema, a book in which Georges Didier Huberman discusses Godard cinema, mainly his film Histories of Cinema. My first questions will be to Alain Fleischer. Alain Fleischer, can you please tell us when did you meet Godard for the first time and how did your relationship evolve through the years?
I met Jean-Luc Godard on the first year the school I founded opened. That was in 1997. We had an opening show called Projections, the Transportation of Images. It was based on installations by famous artists. And at that time, Godard was ordered a film by the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which was supposed to be a film on the future of contemporary art. And to answer the question of what would contemporary art become, Jean-Luc Godard decided to come and film our school. So he spent like 10 days in Le Fresnoy filming the exhibition, having interviews with the students and the teachers. And then he asked me to teach in the Fresnoy. I said, okay, sometimes we can organize that. And some years after, when he was preparing his collaboration with the Pompidou Center, we were proposed to co-produce this event. At the very beginning, the project of Jean-Luc Godard, as is a little bit explained in the film, was to produce 9 long films of 1 hour each, to be shown, to be screened in the Pompidou Center once every month, during 9 months. And Le Fresnoy was asked to be the co-producer of these 9 films. The exchange was that in exchange of the money we would give, our students would be able to discuss with Jean-Luc Godard and to share its footage for the films. But then, when the scholarly year started, we discovered that Godard had changed his project. He wouldn't do the 9 films, and he was thinking of something else. It turned to be that exhibition that we have seen at the end of the film, and then we had some different ways to collaborate. We had some video conferences with him. He stayed in Switzerland. We were in Le Fresnoy. We were exchanging through internet with projections. And at the end of that, he said, finally, if you really want to understand my way to work and my references and my way to deal with cinema, the best would be to do a documentary. The same way as if you were doing a film on a painter and to come to my studio. And that's what we did. At the very beginning, I didn't believe this proposition was serious. Most of all because I wasn't a specialist of Godard. For instance, Baad, who is in the film, would have been a closer filmmaker to do that. But Godard insisted. He said, well, Alain is not wishing to do the film, he will never come to my place. So once I called him, I say, okay, you want us to do the film, so we'll do the film. And we started and we did the film we've seen. I consider it's not a film of mine. In the titles you see it's film by, which is a little different, because I had no chance to conceive this film, to write it, I just tried to film what Godard would offer, because every day I thought he might finish everything. I say, okay, we don't do the film. So everything what he offered to us, I was pleased to film. But it's not a film I could, prepare, organize, think. So it was, at the end, I'm very happy we did it, because I think it's an important document on Godard.
In Godard's film, Histories of Cinema, as well as in your own film, Godard expressed two central ideas about the role of cinema and art in general. He speaks about cinema as a machine which helps us seeing what we usually do not manage to see. And he also speaks about cinema as a mean of resistance, meaning both artistic resistance and political resistance. What do you think about this articulation between aesthetic and politic in Godard's work?
I think that Godard has really been an inventor of cinema. I think that, in fact, he's right. I share this idea that cinema, as well as photography, is a mean to see what is not visible at the, we say in French, naked eye, just directly. I am sure he's a great man using the language of images. The grammar, the syntax of his cinema is perfectly strong. But I do not agree at all with the words behind the images. So I think, to make it short, that Godard thinks right with images and thinks wrong with words, and mainly in his political points of view.
Georges Didier-Berman, do you wish to add something to comment? The articulation between politics and aesthetic in Godard's work?
I understand the point of view of Alain. I think it's even more complicated. It is, so I am quite embarrassed this night to speak about Godard, because I don't feel myself a specialist of Godard. I never really worked on Godard. You mentioned the quotations of Histoire du Cinéma, but in fact my work was not on Godard at all. It was on 4 photographs, that's all. So I am embarrassed, and also embarrassed because it's only the second time I watch the film by Alain, which seems to me very, very rich. It's very rich, but the relation between images and words, as you are speaking about, are complicated because there is, on one hand, what he says, and he says a lot. He speaks a lot. On the other hand, he must be judged on what he on what he does, what he makes. And we have only a small idea of what he makes here. I think we must now make another film about his way of making images. And for me, the most interesting discussions are discussions about precise shots, precise sequences. He says himself, he is very well known, and I would add he's well known for what he speaks about. He's well known as a man who speaks on the TV, who writes articles, and he's not so well known for his films. And perhaps it's the reason he cries. Perhaps, I don't know. It's a question for Alain. The fact that this Morceau de conversation is a very modest title. It's conversation, so it's less than a work of art. And it's Morceau de conversation, that it's less than a conversation. So, on the other hand, this film is a very, very important basis to have an idea on Godard, because when he says, and this is for answering your question, he says to see what we cannot see. He speaks about the artist as an historian, histoire du cinéma. So art or movies, it's about truth. He speaks about a cinema movie as a judge. He speaks about judge. So it's about justice too. Huh? And he speaks about politics, of course. And so this is about political positions. So we can see again this film. I was struck by this rhetorical, sophistical aspect of his discourse, very sophisticated. When he cannot answer a question on history, he comes to the justice. When he is there is a question on justice, he speaks about art, and so on. So he escapes all the time. This is a problem. This is a problem.
Alain Fleischer, your film is one of the rare documents who dare questioning, let's say, problematic or delicate aspects in Godard cinema, mainly his vision of the Jewish question and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This issue seemed to become, with time, a real obsession for Godard. Do you agree with that? And if you agree, what is for you the origin of this obsession?
As a matter of fact, I must say that when I filmed Godard's conversations with other people, I kept to a strict position of a silent filmmaker. I didn't want to interfere with the discussions, and I couldn't interfere because I was completely in charge of filming images. So I hardly could hear or understand what was going on. My concern was to film correctly, to give some indications to the second camera, to find the right angle, because Godard made everything very difficult. For instance, he forbade us to have a tripod or to organize the light. We should work against him, in a way. He couldn't stand someone doing cinema next to him, of course. It's only when I came to the editing table that I started to listen to what had been told. Before, I was just concerned by images. And then, when editing, came the speech. And then I understood. And that's the reason why, 2 years after the film was shown in cinema theaters, I wrote a book, which is titled The Answer from the Silent to the
A response from the silent to the talkie, a return to Jean-Luc Godard.
Mm-hmm. And I said, I think that it's true that Jean-Luc Godard is obsessed, strangely, and in a very complicated way, with the Jewish question. He doesn't know even how to name the Jews. He's hesitating between several ways to name the Jews. This is very strange. When he says, a Catholic, I know, he goes to the Mass. A Jew, I don't know.
But at the same time, he calls himself the Jewish of cinema. I am the Jewish of cinema.
Yes, the Jewish of cinema is a way to say that he's an unfortunate and misunderstood poet. That you can see at the end of the film when he compares himself to these mathematicians who were unfortunate. He identifies himself to these
Jewish as a victim.
Jewish as a victim. Mm-hmm. But everything what he says in his cinema, and he continues, even in his last film, is first that he doesn't know what is a Jew, and mainly the Jew and the Israelis are, what he says, in a document, in a fiction, which is a kind of dream, invention, not fair, unfair in a way, and that the Arabs, the Palestinians, are in a documentary, meaning that a documentary has a relationship to the real. He's obsessed, but I really cannot explain this obsession of his.
Jordi Duberman, can you try the same question?
Of course, it's complicated for us and for him. On the one hand, he was, and he is now probably obsessed by the fact that, according to him, because it's not exactly true, but according to him, nobody was able to film the camps. And he said that this was a central, absolutely central question to the history of cinema. And probably the impossibility or the fact that historically nobody was able to film the camps, as he says, has something to do for him with what he calls death of cinema, probably. So the camps are a central question for the history of cinema for him. So a central question for his own practice. And don't forget that Serge Danet wrote extraordinary texts about the discovery of images of the camps through photography, and of course the major moment, which was 1955, Nuit et Brouillard, Alain Resnais. So this is fundamental. On the other hand, his political training comes from the very left-wing, extreme left-wing critique of colonialism. So, Indochine, Indochina, Algeria, Vietnam, and Palestine. Because of course, for Godard, the Palestinian people is the Vietnamese people of today. This is Unfortunately, it's a common un lieu commun.
Common idea.
A common idea, yes. I think just I am describing this, there is a big contradiction, of course, because for him, of course, the camps, central to cinema, the camps are also the first step for this history of the creation of the Israeli state for him. So, of course, he is in full contradictions about this, I think. So it's not so easy for him. And I think that many of some aspects of his work, not all his work, because he is a great, for me, a great lyricist, a great lyric poet of cinema. And the montage in Godard is so beautiful when it is lyric. And this is a very French tradition. We can speak later about this. But he is also a propaganda filmmaker. There is many things common with Santiago Alvarez, for example. He is a propagandist. So, in Notre Musique, our music, when is the relation, he says, my duty is to make relations at the end of the film, like great mathematicians. It's crazy, because he makes relations between images which are nothing to do. He creates, I am specifically speaking about the supposedly drowned Palestinian. It's completely fake, I think. I asked Pierre Widelnacker about this. No, it's not a good legend to this image.
Oui, tout à fait.
Alain Fleischer, Godard is one of the most influential filmmaker and visual artist. In a way, we can speak about him as a painter. For instance, his use of the collage during the 60s. Godard was also one of the first filmmakers to be interested in the medium of the video since the early 70s. In your film, you invited Godard to see and to comment some artwork installation of your student in Le Fresnoy. But do you think Godard is really sensitive to contemporary art? Because in many ways it seems that he can't avoid judging contemporary art with the traditional tools of the cinematic medium.
You are completely right, to my opinion. It is true that Godard is today the most quoted artist in the world. He's a kind of Picasso. You can speak with an architect, with a choreographer, with a painter, with of course, a filmmaker. After 2 minutes, Godard comes into the conversation. So everybody speaks about Godard for anything, in any kind of field. This is amazing. He is a kind of, yes, what Picasso was at his time, or perhaps Andy Warhol at another time. So Godard is, I would say, the most famous artist, and the artist who is mentioned by everybody. When he was invited to see the works of our students, I discovered that he couldn't understand the use of cinema, of the cinema language and the cinema tools, I mean camera, projectors, by people who are not filmmakers. The installations, what in the subtitles was translated by the word device, are mainly, some of them are pieces of art, using images and sounds, but not being films. And what Godard critiques about these works is you do this kind of work because you cannot do a film. You do this work and it's like a film which is not finished. And he says mainly, you are doing this kind of work because you are afraid of real. And what I understand from that is that for Godard, the real is cinema. So it's amazing how it's difficult for him to understand a work using the tools and the language of cinema, but not dedicated to a space like this one, with a projector, a screen, and seats where you are supposed to keep quiet. He doesn't understand a work which is shown in another kind of space with another use of time, where the visitor can come, spend 2 minutes or 3 hours, get closer, go backwards. He cannot understand that. And his main objection to this work is that it's a way not to do cinema and to avoid reality.
Cinema is a revelation of reality. This is the basic idea he expressed. Georges Didier Berman, do you wish to comment this question?
On what question?
The relationship between Godard and contemporary art is.
For me, the last part of the film is clearly the demonstration that he's completely lost in the problems of the young people in the studio du Fresnoy. What is remarkable is all his answers come to the question of the documentary. So there is so this could be a political position inside the world of contemporary art. You know that there was a project of exhibition in the Museum of Modern Art in New York which failed, and finally it's clear that for me I think that Dominique Paigny would have a different opinion, but I think that the exhibition at Centre Pompidou is a failure. He speaks about this. I don't know your opinion, Alain, about this. He is unable to understand this device with but he makes a completely stupid thing with water. So there is something which does not work. By the way, he's questioning, confronting the world of art, contemporary art. His questioning towards the question of documentary film is crucial, and for this he is right. I mean that some of the artists today I really appreciate. For example, Haroun Farroukhi. This is the good answer to Godard's question. It is a form of contemporary art which questions the field of what is documentary. So I think he is right on this level.
Yes, but can you tell us what do you think is the place and the importance of Godard in art history during the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century? What is for you the...
No, I cannot. I cannot answer the question. Even if, I repeat, I am not a commentator. I am not a specialist of Godard. And even in this case, I think I should be unable to answer this question. The question is not where is he in the scale or in the hierarchy of 20th century art. What is interesting is confronting what Alain said before, that he is a kind of, not really Picasso, but he's he's a father, a reference, absolute reference. Why? This should be a good question.
And why?
Well, I think a fundamental moment in art history, this is just an example, it's not to say this is, but for me, very symptomatic, is the idea developed by Walter Benjamin of the artist as a producer. And Godard is the perfect incarnation of the artist as a producer. An artist creating forms, but to create these forms, he must change the conditions of production. So he's the good son of Benjamin in this way. And of course, you know that references of Godard were, for example, Bertolt Brecht was very close to Benjamin. And of course, which means that there is the central question here is how to edit, how to make a montage. This is on one hand. Every time I speak, it's on one hand, on the other hand. On the other hand, he is, to my eyes, to be quick, it's like a joke, too much French.
Even if he's Swiss.
Yes, but he comes from a very French tradition, which is a tradition, let us say, Victor Hugo, Michelet, Victor Hugo, Malraux. You understand what I mean? I mean, people, and after Malraux, Jacques Lacan. Jacques Lacan is very, very, very important for Godard. Godard is, for me, in a very mimetic relation to Jacques Lacan. This is, it's, why? Because he thinks that when he finds a kind of poetic form, a poetic relation between two words, that's all, it's the truth, it's good. Boom, the Zen shock, you know? And in the case of Victor Hugo, Malraux, this is linked to the authority of a big, 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 beautiful lyricism. And Godard is completely lyric. In the commentary, The Voice of the Histoire du Cinéma, it's quite a funeral discourse by Malraux. It's the same. And there is a different tradition. Coming back to Walter Benjamin, and coming back, for example, to Haroun Farroukhi, who I was speaking about, this is a very different tradition, which is much more modest, much more linked to the, I would say, the archaeologist as somebody who finds precise things. Godard is an archaeologist in a very different way. He imagined the origin. Is it clear what I say?
More or less, yes. In Images in Spite of All, you analyze Godard film, histories of cinema, through which you develop the idea of montage, precisely as a tool for historical critics and historical contextualization. Can you please try to explain this idea?
So, I perhaps since you made the kind of recalling my use of Godard, I want to say that when I decided to study this very precise moment in Histoire du Cinéma, which is it's not easy. There is an image of camps, there is Liz Tyler kissing a beautiful man, and there is Christian representation of Maria Magdalena and the Christ in the Paduan cycle of frescoes by Giotto. So this is very difficult to make something with this. And in my view, after working on this, I realized that it was wonderful. It was perfect. I would not say this for every montage by Godard. Loin de là. But this case was just to say that montage is not a magic word. Image is not a magic word. Word is not a magic word. It means that we were speaking this morning about the question of ontology of image. I would just want to precise that if I think that there is no ontology of image, it's just because image, you cannot speak of image in general. It's impossible. According to Godard, who is very right on this point, there is no image. There is one image which is the result of two other images. So there is not image, there is images. But more, there are use value of images. So all the question is, what is the use value of montage in the case of Bertolt Brecht's Kriegsfibel, where sometimes the montage is really a question, a doubt. Godard said in the film, camera is a tool for doubt, but many times it's not a tool for doubt, it's a tool for saying a definite truth like Lacan or, so it is a question of use value. Eisenstein is a great editor, you say, Leni Riefenstahl too. So we have to just not to speak in general.
Mm-hmm. So what is for you a good montage? What is for you, because we saw in the film, by montage he makes this analogy between Golda and Hitler. With montage he makes this dichotomy between the Jew as fiction and Palestinian as documentary. What is for you the essence of montage? What is for you a good montage? What is for you a just montage?
So what seems clear in Alain's film is that the Golda Meir Hitler montage is just
Nonsense.
a nonsense. Yes, it's just crazy. It's just a kind of provocation. It's just what we call it in French mot d'ordre. So in my work on Brecht, I tried, this is difficult, but to make a difference between to take party and to take position. When you make a montage, the images, one regarding the other, take position. When you are Brecht and you decide to defend Stalin against every evidence, you take party. You understand what I mean? in this montage Golda Meir Hitler, it's just to take party. It's absolutely not to take position. And if it's not position, it's not montage. It's just propaganda. But I cannot say this. I can say this only on the basis of Alain's film. But the best for me is to come back to the film and to look at the previous shots, and this is more complicated. But of course,
it's the opening of the film.
Ah, yes.
This part of the film is the beginning of the film.
We can say maybe that a good montage is a montage who asks questions.
But montage is like image, is like word. It's for the worst or for the best. It's like love too.
Do you wish to add something, Alain?
No, I think that, many artists can do the kind of jokes or bad jokes or bad use of montage, and no one would notice. The problem with Godard is that he has used the power of his language to have an incredible influence on generations of young people. And this very scene we have seen with Golda Meir and Hitler face to face, and like a kind of sign, equal between the two, has influenced many young people in France at least, but I think not only in France. It became, like Georges said, a kind of propaganda.
And he said
you could even see that on the walls in Paris.
And he said he wouldn't change nothing.
Yes, he even refused his friend Gilles Deleuze attempt to excuse him, because, of course, Gilles Deleuze, who was a friend also of Elias Sambar, was a little bit, uncomfortable with this montage of Godard, and he felt necessary to explain it, to try to explain it, and to defend Godard. And Godard very badly refuses this defense. He even says that Deleuze has been a very bad thinker of cinema, and he said that this position of Deleuze regarding the Golda Meir and Hitler scene was just a kind of Parisian position, just to say something in Paris, in the little world of
Mondain.
Mondain.